This time, I Know Not the Mind Probe, episode number 87. It's made of people. People.
Welcome to No, Not the Mind Probe.
All right.
It's a Cockney accent. Which let's fold it. I'm going to tear the veil off here.
Yeah.
This is the fifth time we've done this introduction. We've had some technical difficulties in the studio, and we're running out of spontaneity here.
We have no confidence that this will actually be recorded.
There is a hilarious gag reel of banter, of discussions of many different things, really.
Yeah.
Of my failure to do an accent, about Charlton Heston and one. Nice little tribute to we did a little tribute to Phil Hartman. It was really lovely.
None of that for this. This recording is going to contain none of that, though.
So look, damn it, this is a podcast. We gotta knock this out in 3 minutes. This is a podcast. It is a podcast that is about where we watch and rank every single Doctor Who story ever. My name is John Grant. I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I've been watching it for 38 years. Porter, go.
I'm so nervous now. I can't mess anything up. My name is Porter Mason. I know John, the John who just spoke, and he's been asking me to watch Doctor Who for 26 years. A couple of years ago, I finally said yes. So now that's why we're doing the podcast. And each episode of the podcast, we watch the new Doctor Who episodes in order. We're on the first Peter Capaldi episode. I already mentioned several times that I'm very excited about that. And then John pairs the new Who story with a classic Who story. John, what do we have in store? What are we going to watch?
Okay, we're going to watch the first Peter Capaldi. Slow down for international audiences. Should not start talking faster. Okay. We're coming up on the crucial 3 minutes though, so that's when it gets interesting. But until then, folks, this is the first Peter Capaldi story. This is after the epic Day of the Doctor and Time of the Doctor. We have our first full appearance by Peter Capaldi. Clara, of course, Jenna Coleman is back, and we have the Paternoster gang just dialing in and calling in from the seats from the fans. So. They are in Deep Breath, an extra long premiere episode from the great Stephen Moffat. And because it is set in Victorian London, a setting rarely visited by Doctor Who or really British television at all, explored in not much detail. But I did manage to find one other attempt at it. The classic story, Fourth Doctor Tom Baker, Leela in the Talons of Weng-Chiang.
All right, so we're going to very carefully tiptoe into the recap section.
No one touch a wire. Okay.
And tell you that Deep Breath was the first episode of Series 8 of the new season. It was the 242nd Doctor Who television story. Discussed repeatedly. There's 300 total. So we're getting into, as we were talking about, we're actually getting into modern. This is actually newer Who.
Modern NuWho.
We're only one Doctor removed from the actual Doctor.
Yeah. So. I mean, we're basically there. This is basically present day Doctor Who.
It aired the 23rd of August, 2014, which that does feel like eons ago in terms of the world. Yeah, so that actually feels like a long time ago.
It was still 9 years ago.
And you mentioned it was long. It was a 76-minute episode. So yeah, almost a feature length movie. You know what's funny? I didn't know that when I was watching it.
Just flew right by, right?
Interesting to think about that. Well, yeah, sort of. By the way, Clara's here. We also and Paternoster gang. Also, Matt Smith makes a little appearance.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. That was a little controversial. I'm going to be honest.
But first, we're going to listen to a little clip.
Let's hope that works.
Here is the clip.
No, don't. Don't smile. I will smile first, and then it's safe to smile.
Are you cross with me?
I am not cross. But if I was cross, it would be your fault, and yes, I am cross.
I guess that.
I am extremely cross.
And if I hadn't changed my face, would you be cross?
I would be cross if I wasn't cross.
Why?
An ordinary person wants to meet someone that they know very well for lunch. What do?
Well, they'd probably get in touch and suggest lunch.
Okay, so what kind of person would put a cryptic note in a newspaper advert?
Well, I wouldn't like to say.
Oh, go on, do say.
Well, I would say that person would be an egomaniac, needy game player sort of person.
Well, at least that hasn't changed.
I don't suppose it ever will.
No, I don't suppose it will either.
Clara, honestly, I don't want you to change.
I'm glad
Nice
you picked that
exchange there,
scene
man.
because, well, so like I said, I didn't necessarily go into it knowing it was a longer episode. I did kind of feel the length by the end. I felt like I don't know that they needed 76 minutes here.
No, I agree. I don't think so.
And I have to be honest, at the beginning, kind of up until this scene, I was like, I don't know if this chemistry is really working, and I'm kind of unsure about Peter Capaldi. Like, he felt like he was off on a wrong foot. Like something was just off. And then the way they kind of talk through it, I can charitably write it off to like, oh, that's kind of a regeneration
Yep. Yeah. You gotta be a
choice,
little,
maybe, or whatever.
yes,
But
you're always a little off in your post regeneration.
sure, but it didn't translate well to me. For me, like it wasn't. It was just a little weird.
I think, I think, and we'll see this throughout the rest of the season, really. I think this is, I've never heard it said directly, but it feels to me like this is their attempt to do the Sixth Doctor, who, of course, universally beloved by us, all of his episodes loved by us. No, poor Colin Baker, wonderful guy, great actor, but, they tried to, the idea was he would be prickly at the beginning and he'd warm over time. It feels like that's what they're trying to do here. And yes, you get a little bit,
Well,
probably is a little different.
Right. And I think we get into a rhythm of it that starts to feel better. And by the way, if you're going to do that, Peter Capaldi is a pretty perfect person to pick to do that.
Yeah.
So like, because he can make a jerk likable. Like
Yes.
he can, like, I mean, given some of his other performances, I'm just saying, like, he can do that.
Yeah.
Well, at any rate, so yeah, we're in Victorian London, and we start with like big effects thing. We have a big dinosaur. Which
pretty impressive one, actually.
For those of you listening to this either in the distant past or distant future, basically a movie called Jurassic Park happened in the 90s, and something happened, and then it just became possible to have dinosaurs in everything all the time. Like,
Yeah.
it was just very easy to have dinosaurs suddenly. This was not a thing that occurred in movies or TV prior to the 1990s.
We never saw it. That's true. Because, well, there was stop motion dinosaurs
terrible.
and like, in some Harryhausen movies and things like that. And they were pretty bad. And then suddenly, well, obviously Invasion of the Dinosaurs happened in Doctor Who, and people were like, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Well,
Wow, you can do something with these things. And I think that went straight into Jurassic.
And the reason I mentioned it is because, like, the dinosaur itself is like an amazing model of a dinosaur. They come in pretty close to it.
Mhm.
It doesn't actually play a huge part in the episode. They move on from it, but like, it's an amazing model mixed with, as they're panning around from it into London, the rest of the CG kind of looks kind of chintzy. Like, it doesn't look that good. But then, like, this model of the dinosaur looks incredible and amazing. And it just always strikes me how and similarly, I say throughout the episode too, sometimes the set design and the lighting and the look of it looks like this perfect, like, oh my gosh, this is like a movie that is, instead of a television show. And then other times you're just so aware that they're on a set, and from like just moment to moment that can happen. And it can be very inconsistent, surprisingly.
Yeah, I can see that.
So here we are with this brand new 12th Doctor and Clara, and the reason why dinosaurs there is we're not sure what happened, but Clara was kind of hurtling around in the TARDIS with the newly regenerated Doctor.
Right, remember he regenerates and he's like, do you happen to know how to fly this thing? So,
right.
Clearly out of control. Yeah.
They must have somehow ended up in sort of Silurian era Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyrannosaur bit them. They transport here, so the Tyrannosaur came along for the ride. Here we are, and the Paternoster gang shows up. And I thought it was interesting because it's like they started right into a group of characters that we know.
Yeah.
And so, and then they know the Doctor. They apparently are right up on the regeneration because they're like, okay, this has happened. Whereas Claire is a little more thrown off by this. Which was interesting
because none of them met David Tennant. They
seem aware that this is
yeah. I mean, I guess they know he's a Time Lord, so I guess they know this happens to Time Lords, so that must be it, right? They're aliens, well, except Jenny, but I'm sure Vaster told it. And so aliens know Time Lords regenerate, so that must be just. I guess
there's a good part of the beginning of them kind of putting Clara through the paces and sort of not trusting her and sort of being in a way upset by the fact that Clara is thrown by the regeneration. And I didn't really love it because it just felt like Clara wasn't acting crazy. She was just thrown. That she knows what's happening. By the way, Clara,
knows all
Clara
the
has been
doctors.
thread
Yeah.
throughout all the doctors, and I know, I guess that her memory is erased of that part, right? Wasn't that part of the?
Yeah, she has still. I mean, yeah, she still. I think she still remembers the War Doctor. And
But I feel like they're almost,
yeah.
not almost. Madame Vastra is outright hostile toward her, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
She's just like, I don't know why. Can we give her a minute? Like, it seems okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't quite get that. I didn't quite
What's
understand
going
that.
on here is, and I think poor Stephen Moffat just, I think, overreacted a little bit, to be honest. I think what happened is they announced Peter Capaldi was going to be the Doctor, and then suddenly they were very concerned that the millions of teenage girls who watched Doctor Who because of David Tennant and Matt Smith were not going to like an older man
Sure.
as the Doctor.
So Clara was the voice of that. Is that
yes? And was like, hey, he's always been old. He's not your boyfriend, and all. And I think it's pretty condescending to young, even teenage girls. I think a little condescending to them because they still love Doctor Who, and I think everybody loves Peter Capaldi. But yes, this seems to be Clara is a proxy for the audience here, and it's Stephen Moffat kind of over explaining or over trying to justify, hey, this is still the show you should watch.
It's funny because then in a meta way, that what comes across is that it feels like they're like, hey, Clara, calm down. And it's like, she seems fine. Like, she doesn't seem overly like upset. And I did actually like the line that the Doctor gives where he says like, look, I'm not your boyfriend. And she is like, I didn't think you're my boyfriend. And he's like, no, I'm not.
Not talking
I'm not correcting you. I'm like kind of correcting me. Like, I need to have a different relationship with you. I didn't mind that. Anyway, so the Doctor's finding his footing, as in all regeneration episodes. He's sort of finding his footing, but still kind of in command. The dinosaur they notice in the background is burned to death in a pretty violent thing
once
going
you
on there.
transport a dinosaur to London, you've got to get rid of it. There isn't one there now. I don't know if you've ever been to London, but there is not actually a dinosaur.
And while it was happening in the background, sometimes while they were like talking about something else, it did occur to me like, here's another area where like I guess nobody remembers this dinosaur. At any rate, it's burned to the ground, and the Doctor makes a point when they're there of saying like, hey, there's one person in this who is reacting as though it's not a big deal. And so then they follow up on this guy. They end up, and we heard the scene in the restaurant is where they go in and actually meet this person. Well, not a person, I guess a robot. And they find what's happening is that people are being killed, and it's a sort of a Dr. Frankenstein's lab, but it's like a Dr. Frankenstein's lab that's being run by a Frankenstein who has made themselves over the years, but from bits of and pieces of people.
And you caught this is a sequel to The Girl in the Fireplace, right? That's what he keeps talking about. Remember the spaceship with the robot, the clockwork robots that were kind of...
I know they were talking about something before. I didn't know which one it was from.
The sister ship to the Madame du Pompadour, which was that ship.
Girl in the Fireplace.
I forget this was called, some other French name, I think. And that's why he keeps saying, this is really ringing a bell.
I remember he's saying it. And then the funny thing is, I watched these right in the order that we're going to talk about them. So I watched this, and then I watched the Talons of... And that started to be so similar. I was like, is this it? Like, there were aspects of it that are so similar. So, no, I didn't pick that up, but okay. Yeah, which was a David Tennant episode. And so, and then a big thing here is that they're all androids. So a conceit, a Stephen Moffat kind of conceit is if you don't breathe, the Doctor realizes that they're cyborgs or just automatons because no one's breathing.
Right.
And later, when they're a couple times when they're trying to escape, it's a thing he kind of communicates to Clara that if you don't breathe, they won't know it's you. And that comes up a couple times.
Clara at one point holds her breath for a good 3 minutes of screen time and a very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, but they do show her like basically blacking out. So she, and then there I thought a really interesting moment, given to what you're saying about being a jerk or whatever, the Doctor having a different relationship where they get taken into this guy's lair and the door closes on either side of them. Of course, Clara is in danger. The Doctor escapes. But this Doctor, and again, he's still in kind of early regeneration mode, but his instinct, his immediate thing is to say like, well, all right, I'll see you later. Good luck with everything.
That didn't work out.
No point in like having both of us killed. So, and leaves. And it is a very different reaction than you might imagine, Matt Smith,
all the
Doctor in that
whinging
same moment.
about your companion. Yeah.
But I enjoyed that. I thought that was fine.
Gives a little air of danger, a little like, and then he's the hero. He still is a hero.
And then like he did also give her things to get through. Plus, that sequence ends with her basically saying, "If this is really the Doctor, then he's going to be here for me in this moment," and he is.
Yeah,
I don't fully understand how he is. I guess he like, how did he get back in during that whole thing? I guess she blacks out for a period of time, and then they bring her
he
into.
disguised himself as an android, and so probably just
Right,
slipped
right.
in
So that's during her blackout is
in
when he
the
could have
mess hall.
disguised himself and got back in. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, they escape. Then the Paternoster gang. No, sorry, then they don't escape. The Paternoster gang comes in to help. We fight off some automatons.
I love the sequence is my favorite because they come. Jenny and Vastrick sort of
Like Mission Impossible
tumble
style.
down on these sort of silk scarves or whatever, and then you just hear Strax just screaming and it just hits in the face down.
He has such a fun character, and he has a couple
He's
great
having
lines.
a good time with him. Yeah.
Where what was the one he says where he's like, "Oh, can I have your jacket?" She's like, "I'm not wearing a jacket." He goes, "I'm wearing these are what are those?" Well, those are clothes. Well, you want me to take your clothes off? Like, no. Yeah, it's a great character. So they all fight off, and then the Doctor is talking to the automaton, the head person, and basically traps him in sort of a logical puzzle of saying, which Clara does earlier for different purposes, but the Doctor traps him in a logical puzzle of saying, like, you're going to commit suicide, you're going to kill yourself,
or I'm going to
because
kill
if
you.
you don't, then I'm not going to, and it gets in this whole thing. It was
and basically says one of us, both either you killing yourself is contrary to your program, or me killing you is contrary to programming. One of us is going to be, and then it's left unclear
if he gets pushed off or jumps down. It's true.
Yeah.
And then the robot is impaled.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the episode. Except then there's a little stinger where we see the robot appear. He keeps saying the whole time, "I'm going to make it to paradise."
Yeah, the promised land.
And then they do mention, setting aside the connection, they mentioned this is a being from the 51st century who got kind of trapped back in time, and then is trying to preserve itself so it can kind of get there the hard way, as the Doctor says, but has Theseus ship of Theseus itself into not really being there.
Doesn't even,
common theme on No Not the Mind Probe, Ship of Theseus.
We love it.
But so then when he dies, we see this clip where he's in this lush green garden, and there's a woman there saying that she never says it's paradise, but it looks like, I guess like you got there, which is interesting. It's like, well, first of all, this is an automata, I think, at this point, so where is it? And then but she says, well, welcome, I'm she just say her name is Missy, right?
I think so.
And she says, welcome to heaven. And
then she said, did my boyfriend
she refers to the Doctor as her boyfriend, and there is kind of an air of River Songy to her. She's a little like kind of loopy.
As the great Michelle Gomez. Who's a brilliant comedian. So
that's the end of it. And there's some hit or miss special effects with people taking skin off robots and stuff like that. It's interesting. And they have a lot of these episodes. But my overall feeling ending this, and then tell me everything I need to know about this, is like, I just felt like as an opening salvo for Peter Capaldi, it just felt a little weird to me. It didn't feel like it got off on a great foot. And there were moments where I was like, oh, if this is who this Doctor is going to be, this is kind of cool. And again, I know and love this actor, and I don't need him to be doing the same thing. I don't need him to be doing the same thing as Matt Smith, and B, or David Tennant, who had a similar type of vibe.
Yeah.
And B, I don't need him to do Peter Capaldi things that he's done in other stuff, but it just felt like it really honestly almost felt like him and Clara like kind of feeling out, how do we work together? How does this work? And not in a good way. Like you could feel the actors and the writers kind of doing it, not like the Doctor's regenerating and he's a little loopy. That didn't explain it away.
Yeah, I think so. I think I remember being a little thrown. Well, I mean, first of all, the last new Doctor we had was Matt Smith in the 11th Hour,
which was like one of the best episodes ever.
Yeah,
I think that is ranked like
one of our top. Yeah, who just nails it in a second. Peter Capaldi, probably one of the strongest actors actually to ever be cast in Doctor Who. I think David Tennant's up there very strong. Peter Davison's a very good actor. There's a number of them.
Sorry, by the way, in the 11th Hour was an introduction of Matt Smith and Amy. Like they're all new,
entirely new, and new producer, new. Yeah. I think Peter Capaldi is a lifelong Doctor Who fan.
Oh.
I mean, you can Google some stuff about, like, to the point where he there are letters from him to like the Doctor Who appreciation and the BBC in like the 70s. Like he was the head of the fan club. He visited the set and like saw John Pertwee recording and stuff.
Like a big fan.
Oh, I mean, he wrote, apparently somewhere, Tom Baker references him in like an internal memo to the BBC or something like, oh, and if this Peter Capaldi person, and then the BBC
So he must have been
secretary,
angling to be Doctor Who for a long time.
Well, yeah. So Stephen Moffat apparently said when, he was every time because Peter Capaldi, of course, was huge in the thick of it, as playing Malcolm Tucker, which is sort of his big role before that, and he'd been around. He's actually an Academy Award-winning director. He had won an Oscar for a short film in like the same year. I think Tom Hanks was in Forrest Gump or one anyway, or Castaway. Anyway, so. And Stephen Moffat was saying that he would see Capaldi at these BBC things and he would always want to talk to him about Doctor Who. And of course, he'd been in the Fires of Pompeii, the Dr. Donna one. He was
that's right.
guy. And then he'd also, we have not watched this, but he was also the star of in the Torchwood series. It was a 5-part miniseries called Children of Earth, and he had a major role in that. He was sort of the lead beyond the regular cast.
Oh.
So he's done a lot. So he's obviously loves the show, and so I think
he has two different other characters in the universe.
Yeah. And Stephen Moffat said he's like, he'd wanted to go older with after Tennant, but then Matt Smith came and blew him away in the audition. I shouldn't say blew him away, shot him. Just blew him away. When he recovered, he cast it, and then I think he said, "All right, I'm definitely going older this time. Definitely going older." And then thought, oh, could I get Peter Capaldi? Like he's maybe. And like, so yeah, I reached out and so he's very interested. So he's very excited about that. There was a lot of press coverage on this, obviously, about sort of, is Malcolm Tucker in the TARDIS, and is there going to be swearing in Doctor Who now? Because people can only play one role, except for talented actors. It was a big deal that he kept his accent.
Right.
Big thing of like he's going to be Scottish, and I think we'll
even
see
though the Ninth Doctor had his like northern accent.
Yeah. I think it was because then Sylvester McCoy is sort of Scottish accent.
Yeah, right.
But I think the big thing was David Tennant. They were like, why didn't David Tennant keep his accent? Because he's a betrayal to all Scotchmen. I think that's obviously it. This is the final appearance of the Paternoster Gang in the series.
Really?
They've not come back since then.
That's so weird to me. They're so enjoyable. Like
they're in the spin-off. The Big Finish. Don't worry, he's taking care of it.
Yeah.
This is it's a new take on Clara, right? It's a chance for now we've got another reset on Clara, right? So she's been the impossible girl. We've now figured out the tale with that. She had a brief moment with Matt Smith of like sort of like what's she gonna do now? And so now it's like, all right, so now Clara is the skeptical companion who
I still don't know what her thing is.
It's gonna come into focus in the rest of the season, I think. But yeah, I think still it's basically a reset with her. I do love the scene where it's a little heavy-handed, but the thing where Madame Vastra puts on her veil because she's like, you don't see the Doctor or whatever. And
yeah.
Clara goes off on that rant that's like, just because I've turned your pretty little head doesn't, my poster on my wall was Marcus Aurelius and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay.
But also, can I say a little bit about that, which is that was funny because when we initially come back to meet Claire, remember, it is with them. She's been with them. Something read just funny to me about all that whole thing.
Yeah, and like I said, I think there's just a lot of work going into making this young audience who loved Matt Smith and David Tennant somehow still. I think the BBC was very worried that this was a bad idea. I think they would have liked like Zac Efron or something like that. Let's cast another hot young guy in there, huh? And so I think it was a little bit of Stephen Moffat convincing them. I think that's what the Matt Smith cameo is about, right? Again, I think that's directed at the audience. There was some of the
Matt Smith calling him like. Basically calls in. It's like it's gonna
still
be
me,
okay.
Everybody.
Everybody's
okay,
all
everybody.
fine.
I'm still hot. I'm still out here. I think it was a bit controversial because I think people were like, "Oh, that's never happened before." Like the old Doctor sort of stepping on the new Doctor's first appearance or whatever. And it's like,
Well,
Again,
it happened in a
it's-
big way this year, didn't it?
yeah, true. So yeah, I think it was a little bit of a again. I think there's a lot of great funny moments. I think it's an interesting episode if the story's a bit light. But I think it's trying too hard to sell this doctor, and I wish it just kind
Yeah.
of dropped all that and was just like, it'll be fine. Everybody takes an episode or two to find the new doctor and like them, and they'll like this one.
It didn't, not out of the gate quite as strong as really any of the other three. Obviously I know there's some good stuff ahead too, so watch out. But let's
No, actually, they fired him in the next episode entirely.
What? Oh man.
Sorry, everybody.
Let's turn to our classic episode, the Talons of Weng-Chiang, one of John's favorite episodes.
Yeah.
I know this because he's mentioned it several times, or when grilled and said, "What is your favorite episode?" This is one of them. It is season 14, story number 6. It is the 91st Doctor Who story. It's a 6-parter. You know my feelings about 6-parters.
Sorry, what was the date again on that?
It aired the 26th of February through the 2nd of April, 1977.
My birth year. This is one of my birth stories.
Oh wow!
This is this is the one.
Yeah, my birth year too. This came out, let's see, about 8 months before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the month of March 1977.
I was probably conceived to this.
Probably, that's right.
Nothing like a good Victorian Doctor Who story to get my parents revved up.
So yeah, we had setting aside the image of John's parents having sexual
Don't worry,
intercourse
they
with
don't
one
listen
another.
to the podcast.
We have the 4th Doctor, and we have Leela, and then we have some unfortunate. By the way, I watched this on BritBox. Actually, comes with a warning that is very prominent on like Disney Plus, for example. Lately, of classics that says like, yeah, there's some stereotypes that are depicted in here that at the time were considered okay, and they're not now. And just so you know, because there's some yellow face acting. There's a white dude playing the main Chinese character, and then in general, the way that the Chinese people are dealt with and referred to is not with a light touch.
I know, and it's so out of character it's out of character for the British.
It's not as terrible as you might think, but it definitely has moments where like, ooh, that's a little off. Anyway, let's listen to a clip, and then we'll talk through it.
Then we'll talk about the casual racism.
Kindly tell your employer that Mr. Jago wishes to see him urgently. What? Your employer, Professor Lightfoot. Come along, man. Hurry. Chop, chop.
May I ask, sir, who you are?
Confound your insolence, sir. Just announce me.
Consider yourself an answer. I'm Lightfoot.
Why, dash me optics. I should have realized. That brow, those hands, England's peerless premier professor of pathology. Henry Gordon Jago, sir, at your service.
Mr. Jago, just tell me what all this is about.
The doctor.
What?
And this bag.
Yeah?
Should we go inside? Found this in my cellar. Thought the doctor might be interested. It could have something to do with those Chineses.
Chinese?
Yes. I had thought of communicating directly with Scotland Yard, where, as you know, he's held in the highest esteem.
The doctor is?
Oh, yes, of course. It's my opinion he solves half their cases and then lets them take the credit for it. Don't you agree?
I have no idea.
Oh, why, it stands to reason. I mean, they're policemen, and we all know, they're solid, sterling fellows, but their buttons are the brightest thing about them. Don't you agree?
They got Henry Gordon Jago, and yes.
Yeah, and Jago mainly doing most of it in that, but Lightfoot's great in this episode too. Those two are great, and it's funny because they're later and they're in a scene together, and they have very similar faces. Though Lightfoot's older. Well, I don't know. I guess I don't know about the actors, but he's made to be an older man in this episode. There was a moment where I was like, "Oh, is this the same person somehow?" Doing like really very different characters. Anyway, Doctor and Leela arrive because the Doctor wants to teach Leela about her ancestors.
Yeah. This is like only the 3rd Leela story, I think. So she's still
Leela's
very
new and fresh on the scene.
New and fresh, and we're doing they deliberately wanted to do a Professor Higgins from My Fair Lady, sort of the Doctor civilizing her and teaching her. Hence
or Lightfoot is more the person who takes on that.
Some delightful scenes with that. Yes, we'll get to that.
Well, so they arrive and they come to a stage show. A magician, Li Chang, and then, but on the way to the show, they kind of they're at the scene of a crime where there's a group of Chinese men. They've killed a cabbie, it looks like. So we see a bit of the show, first of all, and that Chang is a ventriloquist, but then we get a hint pretty early on that the ventriloquist dummy he's using is alive. It's a real
Mr.
thing.
Sin. Yeah.
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 So anyway, the doctor and Leela actually meet Chang at the police station, where he's brought in to be a translator. And again, throughout this, there's some just great realistic treatment of how the Chinese were considered in England during this time. What
Was
year
the
is
doctor
this?
kind of this? When is this set in Victorian?
Is
Yeah.
it Victorian as well? Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, this. I mean, it's interesting. Like the Chang plays up the ethnicity depending on the audience, right? And even
Yes.
there's this, and the doctor's sort of oblivious to the racism too, like the stuff where he's like, the doctor's like, "Haven't I seen you before?" And he says, "I understand we all look alike." To you.
Right,
And then,
right.
then the doctor's like, "Are you Chinese?" like just doesn't even catch. So like, that is.
So what we find is that the person who's been killed, the doctor is able to determine that it's scorpion venom,
Mm.
and basically is suspicious of Chang immediately. But in calling this out, he also befriends Lightfoot, because
Mhm.
Lightfoot is like
The pathologist.
the doctor
He's the pathologist. Yeah.
pathologist. Yeah.
This is basically CSI Victorian London.
And I loved. I'm sorry, Jago runs the theater. I should have said that. Then we meet him at the beginning. And both these two characters are really great. These are great Doctor Who characters.
Yep.
Because they're called in. They fit into this little thing. There's no need for them to really be that interesting.
No.
But they're very good, and the actors are great. And plus, especially with Lightfoot, they write it in such a way that you're like, you can see how he's just sort of interested in what's going on. He just kind of sticks around, but never fully understand, but also never really gets exactly what's going on. But his reason for being in there throughout the episode makes sense. And then he, like we mentioned, Leela sometimes gets like left with him, and they have this thing where he's fascinated by her wild ways and like,
but trying to be polite. The scene where
he's never rude or like
scene where she's eating at his place, and it's sort of like he's half trying to civilize her, but then if she does something, like she first grabs like the meat and just starts eating it, and so he picks up a plate and then looks and he's like, "Oh, I'd be rude if I didn't." So he then just puts the plate down and then just grabs the meat and starts eating it himself. But then like later, then she's eating at the table and she picks up the bowl of like yogurt or something like that, and she drinks it, like out of the bowl or whatever. And then she's about to wipe her mouth on the tablecloth. He's like, napkin. And she's like,
"What?
Thank you, Professor."
The funny thing about that is, so
Great
they have
scene.
a really fun dynamic, and you've told me before that Tom Baker just like wasn't really happy with Leela.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about this episode is that like her and Lightfoot, it's like it's so enjoyable. And then when the fourth Doctor comes in, he's just like, he's so mean to her. He's just so dismissive of her, and just sort of like, just stop it. I'm tired of you. And it's just so funny. He has no patience for her. Anyway, what we end up finding, it has like a Jack the Ripper feel to it, of like, oh, these bodies are turning up. What we ultimately find is that Chang is working for this mysterious Mr. Greel. And again, this is what reminded me of the previous episode. He's from the future and is coming back. And in this case, he is essentially the Jack the Ripper person who is finding these young women and uses something about their essence. I don't know if they get into the details of the blood,
distills the life essence from them. Yeah.
And that's how he survives, as you do,
Yeah. Yeah,
as I believe rich people do today, right? They kill children.
Still going on. By the way, I mean, not even masking. By the way, at one point, Chang gets sent out to find a woman, and it's clearly a prostitute. Like she's coming in the middle of the night, and she's like, "All right, ducky," and like all that kind of stuff. And he's just like, he has a great line which says, "Budding lotus of the dawn." Despicable Chang has other ideas, and it's just like, oh, this is a man soliciting a prostitute to kill her and take her life. I was like, all right, this is children's television.
Right, I know. How old were you when you watched this?
As I told you, it was my birth year. This is my parents made me watch this as soon as I was born. It's that good. It's that good.
So, and we should say Chang is just a human being.
Mm-hmm.
The alien is he an alien?
No, he's from the
necessarily?
future. Remember, he's from the
Okay.
51st century.
He was human
yeah.
from the future, but he has Chang working for him by purporting to be a god because probably he's shown him fancy technology. And
Yeah,
done
so
these things.
he came back. There's a lot of backstory that's told through exposition, but he came back in time in his time cabinet and appeared out of nowhere on Chang's farm in China and like a flaming cabinet or whatever. And so Chang was like, "Oh, that must be a god." Which I'm going to be
Right.
honest. If my bureau caught on fire and then a guy stepped out of it, I might be like, "All right, you might be something."
Yeah, you just might be a god. So yeah, Weng-Chiang is the god, and
Weng-Chiang, yes.
Weng-Chiang,
Mhm.
and then we should also mention that the dummy, like is a live
Mr.
person,
Sin.
and it's actually similar to again the other episode. It's actually an automata that has the pig's brain in it, but
Yes,
it's
the
been made
Peking
into.
homunculus is the name.
So okay, so that's all great.
Mhm.
Anyway, basically, there's just lots of scenes of like different combinations of these people: Jago and the Doctor, Jago and Leela, Lightfoot and Leela, and so on and so forth. They're trying to track down Greel.
And the time cabinet, yeah.
They finally, right. There's this time cabinet that is allowing him to get back, or it's just
Yeah,
I
he
forgot
needs
why
it.
they.
So he somehow got separated from it, and he has the key, and no one else can get into it. And he needs to go. He wants to go back, but the time cabinet was it's a bad time experiment. It doesn't work, or it's going to destroy him. But he's not convinced. And the doctor's like, "You can't use it again. The Sigma beam will destroy London if you try to use it. You can't." And he's
That's
like,
not
"No,
good.
no, it was this, all that." Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to get.
And then he's about to capture Leela and take her essence, and then they come in and save her. But of course, before that time, Leela comes in and saves the day a couple
Yeah.
times too. But of course, they have to have it so Leela's saved at the end, and
Of course.
then the final thing is Chang is. And then there's a nice little speech by Chang where he's saying like
He's dying.
He's dying. He's like, I almost made it to like I was about setting aside everything he's doing for this. Is like I was about to make it to like the big time. I'm basically I'm
Performing
poor,
for
like
the
I'm
Queen.
immigrant. I came to this country and I was about to like ascend to be performing for the Queen, and then this is all going away.
Yeah, I was impressed at how they give Chang a character arc, and at the end, you feel sympathy for him as he's again in a Saturday afternoon children's TV show as he's dying in an opium den after having been mangled by a giant.
But
Classic.
Mr. Sin, who's the name of the pig man, jumps in and kills Greel. Oh, sorry, or distracts Greel. And then the doctor puts him into the machine that he uses to take the life force. He puts himself into it, so it disintegrates him
into
essentially.
A husk, yeah.
And then, but then the little guy attacks Leela, and then the doctor very unceremoniously destroys it. And then it's a funny, clearly turns from a person to like a doll. Because when Tom Baker throws the thing down, it's like there's no weight to it whatsoever, and he throws it down, and that's the end. And then we have some good lines throughout. I should mention Jago also throughout is very flowery language. He likes language, and he likes alliteration. He's always talking with alliteration throughout.
Yes, he's a showman. It was this great
up.
scene with him talking about talking to Casey, the guy who's the maintenance guy for the theater, or whatever, and he's like, "Don't disturb me, Casey. I'm concentrating before the big performance." And Casey's like, "But you don't do anything, Mr. Jacob." And he goes, "What are you talking about? I smile at people." No, yeah. No, I love this episode. I don't think anybody would be surprised when we get to the ranking part. It's just so this is Philip Hinchcliffe's last episode he produced from the beginning of Tom Baker up to here, so about 3 seasons. It's also Robert Holmes' last episode as script editor. Holmes, a legendary Doctor Who writer and responsible for some great episodes that we've seen, some we haven't yet. Robert Holmes also. So they both wanted to just go out on a high. Apparently, Philip Hinchcliffe got in a lot of trouble because he just blew out the budget. Just was like, whatever. And just apparently it went way over budget. And he was just like, "What are you gonna do? I'm not coming back. So see ya." And it shows that. But again, I think they asked the BBC to do Victorian London, and they were like, "No problem. Like we have everything costume sets. I mean, the sets are amazing. Like Lightfoot's house looks great. They're in the with the dragon at the end and the big wherever they are hidden in wherever they are. And the theater, they've got the theater, which is great. So it looks fantastic, and it's got fog and coaches, and it's very Tom Baker basically just dressed as Sherlock Holmes. I mean, just not even trying to hide the influences there. He's clearly having a blast. Leela's great, and yes, you have Jago and Lightfoot. That's Christopher Benjamin and Trevor Baxter. They are Robert Holmes was famous for his double acts. So his two people, pairs of people in their several stories where you have this. I always forget when I watch this that they don't actually meet till the 5th episode. That they're separate characters, and it's only towards the end that they team up, and they're even wonderful together. And I'm sure you will not be surprised to know that Big Finish has done a 13 series of spin-off of them. 13 sets of 4 parts with the original actors. Trevor Baxter did die a few years ago, sadly. And but they have had, they've had, and they're wonderful. They're sort of Victorian age mysteries, right? Almost like Sherlock Holmes-y kind of little mysteries with the two of them investigating, paranormal events together. There's been a crossover with the Paternoster gang and Jago, which is pretty entertaining. Jago and Strax has been sort of, there was actually a Jago and Lightfoot and Strax crossover as well. So there's been back and forth with two, which are pretty good. It's very funny. I think the lines are incredibly witty and funny, and obviously all the actors are really good. It's very dark and grotesque too. I mean, there's sort of that just both a disturbing and at the beginning when they find the body in the Thames, and there's like the sort of homeless woman who's sort of Patsy is her name, and she's like, "Oh, it's like I've never seen anything like it, Governor. Make a horse sick. That would." It's just like it's supposed to be funny, but it's also disturbing. There's again, this is Robert Holmes' writing, which is I think where Stephen Moffat emulates. There is so much thrown away in backstory about just the Doctor and Greel at one point are confronting each other over the chessboard, and they're just going back and forth, and the Doctor's just like, the Peking homunculus was an assassin that was trying to assassinate the head of the Icelandic alliance. And then, Tom Baker's like, I was with the Filipino army on the final advance on Reykjavik. Like, he just throws away these like World War VI stories that are, and Magnus Greel was the Minister of Justice in Brisbane. It's all these little bits. But obviously we do have to acknowledge. Oh, and then the giant rats, which is obviously a triumph of special effects. I love the cuts between clearly a regular sized rat in a miniature sewer model climbing around, and then just a giant Muppet basically it's sort of Leela's you gotta have a little Doctor Who effect. Yes, we cannot ignore obviously the treatment of homunculus is I think it's really the anti-homunculus spirit. No, it is. Robert Holmes was interviewed once years later. He sadly passed away many years ago, but was interviewed once years later, and somebody said, "Hey, well, don't you think that Talons of Weng-Chiang was a bit racist?" And he said, "Well, yes, it was." And sort of, I think his point of it was that this is how people would have talked right back then, right? That they would have said those words. And it's an interesting argument. I was thinking about it, like, okay, yeah, I mean, I don't know it's a hard call, right? Because obviously that is what people would have said, and I think you can acknowledge that they said it without. I was like, it'd be like if Queen Victoria, if we had a TV show with Queen Victoria and she came in and she's like, "My name is Queen Victoria, my pronouns are she, her," and like, let's acknowledge the indigenous people that lived here before. And it's like, well, no, they wouldn't have said that, right? I mean,
I think honestly, it's more the unfortunate thing of that the
John
Chang
Bennett
himself is it's like he's playing
he's
playing against race.
And the sad part is his performance is great. I mean, he's playing it very well.
He's doing a good job.
And to me, there's a line here there's a spectrum here of obviously the one end of the spectrum is Mickey Rooney in Tiffany's, which is
Great
obviously
example,
horrifying and horrifying
really
in a way that
ruins that movie. Like, if you watch that now, it's
an
so
unnecessary
jarring.
character, an unnecessary character with a humor that is out of sync with the rest of the movie. Even Blake Edwards was like, "Yeah, sorry about that, everybody." So it's obviously that. Then there's, on the other end of the spectrum, I feel like there's like Peter Lorre in the Mr. Moto movies, which I don't know if you've ever seen those. I love them. I actually have them on DVD because I just can't get enough of people playing Asian. No, just kidding. Obviously not. But Peter Lorre played Mr. Moto is a Japanese secret agent, and there were some fantastic books, and then there was these movies made in the 30s. And Peter Lorre is famously a Hungarian actor, but he plays Mr. Moto. He plays this Japanese character, and it's similar to Chang in that it's Peter Lorre he plays up the Japanese, like he plays to the Japanese stereotypes when there are other white people in the scene, and then when it's just him or when he's with people who acknowledge that he is the smartest character in the movie, then he plays it much more straight. And I think you see that here with Chang too, right? There's some scenes with Chang when he's on stage in the theater and he's doing the magic tricks and he says, "One of us is yellow," and things like that. His accent is stronger. His accent is more pronounced, than when he's in the regular scenes and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I don't look. I think I can speak for all Asians here when I say no. Obviously, I cannot put myself in the shoes of someone who, but the heart doesn't seem like it's there trying to be cruel here.
And as you mentioned, it's also helped, or as you mentioned, the writer said, it's also helped some by the fact it is set in Victorian England.
Right.
So you got a couple hundred years of leeway there.
I wish they'd been able to find they have other Asian actors obviously in other roles in the which is good, but they're all unfortunately playing all members of a tongue, so they're not exactly So yeah, it's not great from that perspective, but again, hopefully it's like, again, if the alternative was Mickey Rooney, I'll take what we got. It still is a strong episode for me.
Theme time for new beginnings in our themes. Time for all of us to revisit who we are to me, who you are to she and he, and theme.
Ooh, it's like a folk song from Peter, Paul, and Mary's themes.
That's right. We're adherents of the repeating themes are No, Not the Mind Probe. We like to look at ideas and topics that are threaded throughout Doctor Who and time and space itself. John, what theme did you want to touch on for this episode?
Yeah, this one, let's talk about
homunculi.
Yeah, homunculi. It's time, people. We need to acknowledge the homunculi in the room. Yeah, it's time to rip that Band-Aid off, America.
Also, by the way, there's homunculi in the room behind you. Look out!
Yeah, let's talk about Tom Baker, actually, and let's talk about the Doctor too. I think because we obviously got to get a new Doctor in Peter Capaldi, and I think we can link these together. We've now watched a lot of Doctor Who, and you've now watched a good amount of Tom Baker. So I'm curious for your take, because Tom Baker is even today seen as the quintessential Doctor. As the one that most people remember. Certainly anyone who watched the original series remembers him as sort of the Doctor, and even a lot of people who are only casually sort of seen it, he's the Doctor. And not to denigrate any of the other performances, but it's like, Tom Baker. So I don't know. I'm curious, what is your take on Tom Baker so far and his performance? And I'm going to move the screen a little. Sorry, people watching tonight.
No worries. Yeah, I don't care for him, so happy to move on to.
So everybody's wrong. The world is wrong.
I probably, in the corners of my mind, prior to watching Doctor Who, it had seeped in through popular culture. The scarf, the curly hair, stuff like that. Like, I also thought of that was Doctor Who to me, though I didn't even really know him. Having watched more of it, I think it's interesting because there are these, prior to the new show starting, these 6 other people who are pretty different versions of the Doctor, and it's funny how they just aren't as much of a part of the culture. Although, actually, interestingly, I think Sylvester McCoy is the other one that, I don't know, there's aspects of that sort of resonated with me. But like the third Doctor, certainly the first Doctor, really, and Peter Davison, like, they were very much surprises to me. I was like, I didn't even know that, like, I had no indication that this was Doctor Who, because everything I'd seen in Doctor Who was Tom Baker. Having watched them, more of them, a good bit of them at this point, of all the different Doctors, he probably is maybe my favorite of the classic Doctors, though, as we've seen, I've rated a lot of the third Doctor episodes
Yeah.
very highly.
Yeah.
Part of it comes with the plotting and stuff like that. I think, similar to Matt Smith, my feeling, though I'm not sure about this, is that he probably just stayed a few seasons too long. Now, that's also probably why most people, like, more people saw him, like, during this
He was
period.
7 seasons compared to 5 for Pertwee and then 3 for most everybody else.
But it feels like he just came in and just owned this character, and it is so perfect and unique, and really does. Maybe there were elements that were there in some of the previous Doctors, like especially you mentioned that the second Doctor was really the one that like brought this sort of this kind of intergalactic dandy, like that is who Doctor Who is. But Tom Baker just really like came in and so confidently embodies this thing. It's like, oh, when he started doing the Doctor, it was like, oh, has this just been around forever, this character? Like, it just seems so timeless, when he's doing it. But I feel like even in this one, at this point, he just feels a little like he's his heart's not totally in it. Like, he's just been doing a lot, not in a very subtle way. Not he's putting in great performances, but it just feels like it would have been even better if it had just been like 2 or 3, maybe 4 really solid seasons, and then like gotten out of there, because it feels like it just wears a bit. But his humor and his his humor is so interesting because it's not jokes, it's just like weird turns of phrases and misdirections.
Yeah.
And like the conversational like surprises, like where he is so Doctor Who to me, and I feel like that is brought back like with some of the other Doctors. So really enjoy it, but similarly, like I almost feel like I've already, and I haven't because I haven't seen all the Tom Baker episodes. I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't need any more. Like I got it, and yet I know there's like still actually a good bit more to come with Tom Baker, and maybe some of the better ones. Who knows? But I just mean the amount of it is like that's enough, and yet I know it goes on for so much more.
Well, it's interesting because if you watched it in order, there's definitely a trend, and it's like the first couple seasons, it's like young actor, never really known for anything else, hadn't had a big break, had been in a couple movies and things like that, and then so really working hard, not sure what the reaction is going to be, and suddenly 2 seasons in, suddenly Doctor Who is pulling in 14 million viewers on Saturday afternoons. Like it's a huge show. Everybody knows who he is, and you can definitely see his ego starts getting the better of him, and he starts becoming more of a prima donna. The behind the scenes stories, he was pretty difficult to work with because he's just, in a way, that he felt a lot of ownership of the show, and he was very passionate about how it should be done and what he believed. But then also, he wanted it to be funnier. He liked the humor side of it, and sometimes there wasn't enough. You need to curb that humor. It was sometimes it was inappropriate, right? I mean, he wanted a talking cabbage on his shoulder. We talked about that, and it's like, yeah, that's the kind of thing a producer should say no to. I think Philip Hinchcliffe was a producer that stood up to him. I think later producers, it was harder for them because he was so big. Well, anyway, so there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, I think his thing is the alienness, right? And you see that in the humor that he's doing, which is going to be sometimes odd. Like, again, that "Are you Chinese?" A bit is sort of, that's an alien way to approach that, or that the comment Chang is making, which is to not recognize the racism, or he tried. They go in and out. There's the scene in I think we've watched The Seeds of Doom, the one with the Krynoid and Harrison Chase and all that. There's a scene where they're supposed to amputate the guy's arm to avoid the alien taking over, and the other doctor says, well, you're a doctor, can't you do it? And he just kind of looks off in the distance. He says, you must help yourselves. And he sort of plays this very, he's in many ways, he's kind of Matt Berry as Laszlo, or just Matt Berry in any performance, which is never pronouncing a word the way you'd expect it to be pronounced, or delivering lines in ways that just are so out there, but then you're like, yeah, that's actually really funny.
It sort of strikes me as this combination. I've talked before about the Sixth Doctor, just looks wise, Colin Baker reminds me of like Harpo Marx. Like, it's like, Tom Baker is like this weird combination of Harpo and Groucho Marx, like, and that it's this complete obliviousness, like, from another planet of Harpo Marx, but this motor mouth of Groucho Marx, and constant, and it's this interesting like combination of these two very different things. Yeah, those asides that come out of nowhere are great, and they're used to really good device in the plots often, because they throw the characters off guard too. They throw them off their back on their heels. So yeah, I really love it. I think it's funny, similar to the Matt Smith, where it's like he and Amy, it was like, wow, that's great. It's like the Tom Baker and Sarah Jane moments are like, they're amazing. They're great. I think
Yeah.
those couple seasons or whatever they were are great. And I think I would kind of leave it there. But
Well,
I
and I
mean, like,
think
there's other good stories, but like
Yeah.
those are so good. And he's clearly loving it. And like, it's just all really good, you know?
Yeah, we'll see some more with Lala Ward, the second Romana a bit. I think we haven't seen too many of hers, but we'll see a few more of that. But then maybe to tie this to our current one,
Yes.
I think Peter Capaldi is trying to bring back the alienness too, right? Like I am, and I think that Moffat trying to do it too. So that the "I'm not your boyfriend" is also, I can't be your boyfriend. You're a 20-something-year-old girl. I'm a 1,000-year-old
Yeah.
alien. And so I think, and again, Peter Capaldi not being who you'd expect, or being a little bit more, and we'll see this in the next episode too, is like, being a little bit more prickly and not, being like, hey, I'm above this ordinary stuff, or I'm not going to respond to things the
Yeah.
way you expect me to respond. Yeah.
Like, I can see more of this situation and the universe than you, and it gets a little frustrating sometimes, like having to go through the details of this, but doing so in a humorous way. Yeah, I'm excited to see that aspect of it, because we have seen Matt Smith, even definitely more so than David Tennant, was very, very like this nurturing doctor, and this like, and he became so involved with Rory and Amy for so long, and they were really this, I kind of like having him back to like just this vision of him at the TARDIS moving switches and people asking questions about like, wait, what are we doing? What's happening? It's like, I really don't care. It doesn't really matter what you understand. So don't.
You're just a tiny. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of looking forward to having more of that.
Well, stay tuned.
John, is the recording still going?
Yeah, hopefully, yes. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen.
Don't know.
Folks, this is actually the 37th take of this episode. Porter's running out of spontaneity.
You know what we should have done? We should have started up Zoom as a backup, as we used to do in the olden days. And I just didn't do that. So,
seat of our pants here.
So if you're hearing this, people, then
it's amazing. It's a miracle.
All right, there are 300 Doctor Who television stories. We have ranked 172, I believe, and that might be a little out of date. Let me see, 100. No, that's right. And so we're going to rank 2 more. So I'm going to start with me. First, Deep Breath. Yeah, so like I said, it wasn't my favorite. And I don't want to like ding Peter Capaldi right from the beginning, but kind of went down the list, and I ended up putting it right in the middle, which happens to be right below Ark in Space, which is a great episode, but that's just where that is. Above the Ice Warriors, I actually have it 2 below Rose, which was the intro of the new series. So, and it actually felt very similar to me there, where it's like interesting, exciting, still not quite sure about it. Not like a bad episode, just I don't think I'd rewatch it. And other than the Paternoster Gang had some nice moments,
some good tracks,
and it is more by the end of it. I was really looking forward to more in the future of it. So I have it at 100 actually, so kind of in the middle of the pack.
Okay.
Talons of Weng-Chiang, I know it's going to be very high for you. So I thought about it. I've decided this is about as high as I can. I was like, I'm going to put this as high as I can put it.
Oh, thank you. It's okay.
Because I want to get it up there in the conversation. So it's a 47 for me. Because while I did really enjoy those 2 characters, the plot really didn't get me. I enjoyed a lot of the acting, but the plot just really didn't draw me in. And again, 6 episodes, it just felt like a little too long. I hear you that it was very dense, and there's like in the dense in a way that it was like, oh, there's lots of layers to it, and they're talking about all this different stuff, but it just felt like kind of a slog by the end. And so that was about it. But yeah, I put it around the Doctor, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Snowman, I put it right by the Snowman because I was like, this feels like, oh, it's another one of this era. And
sure, yeah. If you're going by
well, that's, I know
setting,
it's gonna be very hard. So tell me your rankings.
Your ranking by setting. Well, so I need you to switch into my rankings thing and find because if I switch tabs, I think this whole thing shuts down.
Okay. What do you have?
So we'll start with Deep Breath. Tell me where I put it. It should be marked.
You have
on
it
there.
40.
40. Okay. Yeah, which is about it's a strong episode to me, I think. Well, what I think has been interesting is as we go through these in order is this. Every time there's a new Doctor, it's like, "Woo, that's nice!" Like I was, it's excited, right? So there's a little bit of a jump for it being a new Doctor. But I'm giving it that, I think, on the strength of Capaldi. I think it's a little long. I agree. I think it works too
You
hard
also
on the
know more of where Capaldi is going to go.
right, and that
So.
yes, I think that's the other thing, right? Is I know actually we're coming on. He's going to be a great Doctor. So yeah, the plot is sort of like whatever. It's sort of, it is a. I mean, it does what I think Moffat recognizes. Like I'm not going to tell a new story here. The focus needs to be on the Doctor and the companion and that dynamic and things like that. I do like just some good stuff from the Paternoster gang, and so yeah, I've got it there. And then, yeah, no surprise, Talons of Weng-Chiang is my new number one. Woo! Yeah. Too bad I've been telegraphing this for the last 87 episodes of this podcast. What can I say? I love Yellowface. I just can't. It's just something about it. No, in spite of sort of its cultural anachronisms here. To me, it is very quintessential British television in a way, right? I mean, again, set in Victorian times, just sumptuous BBC sets. I think there is not a single miscast person in every performance from, the police constable, Sergeant Quick, the police constable who has like 3 lines and like, and obviously Jago and Lightfoot, the guy who's at it just everything is really strong performances with, you got to have one Duff special effect, and the rat is the thing. I love all the backstory. I've definitely seen this one many, many times, and can recite large chunks of it from memory. It'll be but I think, and it's interesting because I would have, it's if I said, what's your favorite Doctor Who episode? This isn't a typical Doctor Who episode in many ways too, right? I mean, there's no Daleks or Cybermen or any of the classic monsters. It's just a very, to me, it's a very clever story. It is a little long. Any 6-parter is going to be, but I think I just enjoyed this world so much, and I love Sherlock Holmes, and I love this atmosphere too of like, and I will say, I don't want to brag, but I've been to London. I've been places. Been to London. I just got back from Philadelphia, so I've seen the world. Yeah,
wow, yeah,
and
sort of the Benjamin Franklin tour of
there
world.
Is something about this atmosphere of, even now in London on a winter's night, there is this atmosphere of sort of cold and damp and fog and you murder 1 or 2 prostitutes like we all do, and you just, because you're in the spirit, you're just like, I'm in the zone here. So yes, this is to me quintessential British TV, of which I am a big aficionado. So yeah, number 1 for me, easy peasy.
Number 47 with a bullet for me. I mean, it's right there. All right, so no, when we put those together, you'll be happy to know that does more than split the difference. So that puts it at number 17 among our 174 episodes, 74 episodes that we've ranked. Talons of Weng-Chiang is now at number 17, and Deep Breath clocking in. And so that's right around just below Pandora Opens Big Bang, just above the name of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Deep Breath clocks in at number 69, tied with The Unicorn and the Wasp, which sort of seems good to me. I don't know. That feels
actually that's very funny because Jago is in The Unicorn and the Wasp. Christopher Benjamin plays remember the Lord in the wheelchair, the guys in the wheelchair with that's him. So there you go. And Jago also, Christopher Benjamin, also in Inferno, which is one of our high ones. He plays
that is high. And
Civil Service.
Deep Breath is also tied with Victory of the Daleks.
Okay.
Down there at 69. Okay. Above Ark in Space, Terror of the Zygons, just below Ambassadors of Dusk. Yeah, you said Inferno? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's Christopher Benjamin.
Yeah, that's
way
number
up there.
3.
Yeah, we like that one. That's a
Day the Doctor is our new number 1.
For those just tuning in, go back and listen to that bumper episode of ours.
It's sort of funny because our 1 and 2 are the first and basically the last Matt Smith. Not missed one. Day of the Doctor and then the 11th Hour. So he came in strong, and then left pretty strong.
And we liked him. We liked him coming in. We liked him walking away.
You can go to mindprobe.show and you can see all these rankings. You can see me and John's, combine them together.
What are you wasting your time for, people?
Show.
Yeah.
You can subscribe to us on YouTube, like we said, on the iTunes, and it's Mind Probe Show at YouTube.
Just get it anywhere you. I mean, look, I'll tell you, folks. I re-listen to these because I'm usually too drunk to remember what I said. And it's helpful to go back over it. And I listen to it while cleaning the toilets. and it is.
Okay.
This is a show that you should listen to while cleaning the toilets. I mean,
Sure.
there's something about it that just, and we got a lot of toilets in our house, so.
Not a lot, tons.
Yeah.
So you can
Why
go
do
there
I
and
get?
check
I
it
don't want
out.
to show off everybody. I know I've been to Philly. I got a lot of toilets. I know people are just getting the curtain is pulled back on my lifestyle here.
And so you can do all that on the website. You should do that. You can also email us, Porter at mindprobe.show, John at mindprobe.show. If you have anything to say about us, please rate us on the iTunes store. That would be much appreciated.
Tell people,
Tell
fans,
people,
friends,
word of mouth,
yeah.
Get the podcast out
because
there.
we won't.
We
That's my
don't plan on
priority.
it.
We will
This
not
is
tell
just-
anyone.
We're trying to keep it just for you,
Yeah,
listener.
yeah.
We like. So find more of you. John, what do we have in store for next episode?
Well, probers, do you like to go inside things? Because if you do, then this next episode is for you, because it's all about getting real tiny, and going inside stuff. It was a very easy linking theme this time. So we're moving on with Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman into our next story, and we're going to introduce a new regular character, the great Danny Pink, joining us in Into the Dalek, which, as you might be able to tell, even just from the title, really involves going inside of a Dalek, getting miniaturized, going inside a Dalek. So I paired that with another Fourth Doctor Leela episode, not too many after Talons of Weng-Chiang, actually. The Invisible Enemy, in which we go inside Tom Baker's brain, which would be a terrifying experience, I feel like, for just about anyone. And Porter will be excited. We meet K9.
K9, that's
First
right.
K9,
Yeah.
here it is, the thing you've dreamed about.
What gets me in thinking for these episodes is the Saturday Night Live sketch, Tiny Elvis.
That's right, Tiny E.
All it
H-I-E.
is just Rob Schneider doing an Elvis impression and them shrinking him down, and then everyone else going, "You got it, Tiny E." That's it. It makes me laugh every time, and you can't find it because I don't know, the Elvis estate has
Because
removed it.
Elvis face is also deeply offensive.
That's very offensive.
Yeah.
Please,
Please don't do Elvis face.
mindprobe.show.